Hi, I'm Cavan Miller, and this is my Theater History 1 research project presentation. As we have studied the entire history of theater up through the 18th century, I have chosen to perform my piece based on the innovation that made verisimilitude in theater possible, the introduction of dialogue by Thespis. I believe that this is what transformed theater from a representational, presentative form of art, the kind of storytelling that cavemen would have used to communicate, into a personal experience for the audience. There is very little concrete information about Thespis, and it's certainly difficult to get a personal perspective from a man who's been dead so long that the language he spoke is buried with him. That said, the fundamental self-aggrandizement of taking what was the duty of the whole chorus onto oneself, as well as the tonal change that a more personal connection to the character creates, tell us more about his personality than any biography could. The first tragedies and the first interpersonal dialogue between chorus and actor are both historically attributed to Thespis, and that's enough. It's almost comical how history treats its participants. Great swaths of humanity and civilization, of artists and art, just lost to time. There were hundreds upon hundreds of members of the chorus over the lifespan of the art form I loved, and any performer is a fool who doesn't recognize the fact that each one of them was completely vital to the process. But almost every one of their names is now gone from human thought. According to Brockett's History of the Theatre in 534 BC, I changed the face of theatre itself by inventing the tragedy, and all the world knows about me is that I was born in Icaria. By Dionysus, even Horace, the man who codified poetry into the whole first Christian millennium, had nothing more to add than that I played from a cart. His Ars Poetica barely spares me a few lines before he moves on to Aeschylus. Still, I am remembered, and why not? Of course I am remembered. I changed the whole course of performance. I invented the tragedy, the greatest art form in the world, modern or antique. We had our great Dionysia, where dozens of the most ingenious writers in the world gave true life to my creation. The English wrote their most enduring plays about the madness of man and the destruction of families, and even 2500 years after my time, the world hasn't tired of hearing about the misery and the trials of others. True, the public, the least predictable and most interesting aspect of art, prefer their tragedies canned and rewatchable and given tiny golden statues named Oscar, but tragedy still remains the most gripping and human form of performed art the world over. Tragedy, a term which, according to USA.edu, meant goat song because the ultimate prize for the festivals at which we performed was a goat. How far it's come. But, and not to return the conversation to me, not a Hollywood film or a Shakespearean epic would be the least bit possible if it were not for my one great innovation. It is, of course, a great accomplishment to use the satyr plays of my youth as a base to create tragic accounts of myth and legend on an entirely new scale. If you believe Philip Wentworth Buckham's The Theatre of the Greeks, I even taught the chorus to dance, giving the audience visual spectacle along with the story, a practice that has endured even to the musical theatre of modern times. But the thing that truly changed by my hand was the introduction of dialogue. We went from storytellers to participants in the story. No longer were we relaying the distant lives of kings and queens and gods. We were living them right there on stage for the audience to see. Of course, by my death, the actor was still alone among the chorus, and the arrangement was more call and response than conversation. The chorus would exclaim in horror and delight as the actor told his story, asking questions and begging for a satisfactory resolution. The enduring mark of tragedy is not exactly its happy endings, so they would fail to get their wish more often than not, but That's all the better to teach the audience. But Aeschylus, the brilliant bastard, put a second actor into the mix. Two actors having a scene all to their own. The chorus and the audience forgotten as the conflict and the pain and the emotion of the story was felt by the two in real time, and because of that, the audience felt it too. Sympathy and empathy, that's what tragedy is all about, and Aeschylus understood that even better, I think, than I did. Sophocles came not long after and added a third actor, which, according to Diogenes Laertius in his Lives and Opinions of Eminent Philosophers, made tragedy truly complete. I can't really say I agree with him. In my mind, tragedy was never truly complete until the chorus was retired altogether and the theater became about reproducing reality rather than relating fantasy. For all my contributions, I consider my works outdone by the great authors of later millennia. Were it not for the unfortunate fact that none of my works have actually survived, according to Britannica.com, the few fragments associated with me are very likely not mine, I'm sure the world would agree. The invention in France of verisimilitude is, in my estimation, the most important development since my invention of dialogue. Theater has changed so much since I wrote the first exchange of dialogue between character and chorus. The pursuit of truth is a beautiful, dangerous thing, and if my legacy brought us as an art and an industry closer to achieving that truth, I think I can say that I am well remembered indeed.